Sun Life Financial is proud to host this roundtable on mental health in partnership with the HR Reporter. It's part of our thought leadership platform, The Conversation, which brings together leaders and experts to deliver the best thinking in group benefits, both inside and outside our organization.
In January, Canada unveiled its new national standard for psychological health and safety in the workplace. A cooperative project between the Mental Health Commission of Canada, the Canadian Standards Association, and Quebec's Standards Development Body, or the BNQ, the voluntary standard is intended to provide support to employers and employees looking to promote mental health awareness in the workplace. While the standard may be a welcome guideline to organizations, some employers are asking the next logical question: what do we do now? Canadian HR Reporter hosted a roundtable with experts from a wide variety of backgrounds to hear their perspective on mental wellness in Canadian workplaces. The session was moderated by Todd Humber, Canadian HR Reporter's managing editor. The panelists discussed their view on how this new standard can be used by employers to foster a more understanding workforce. Brian Noller, a staff sergeant with a police service in Ontario, opened the session with his personal story.
This is an incident that happened to me be coming up on 9 years ago. It was an on-the-job incident. I was the first responder to a very serious collision, and the driver, who subsequently died, was one of my best friends from university. So basically I'm in this van, what's left of it, and as I'm doing CPR, first aid, he died. And more or less as I was, kind of had him in my arms. Obviously, at the time, you sort of go on autopilot. I was running a shift, so I had to not only try and deal with my own reactions to this, but I still had a shift to run, so I still had to try and pull it together and direct my officers and make notifications and whatnot. That included talking to his wife, which was not the easiest thing, and probably should have left it to someone else. My immediate way of coping was to go home and drink, which was, in all things considered, not the best way to deal with it. It was very old school, suck it up, deal with it, it's part of the job. And actually, that night I had a much more senior sergeant to me telling me, you know what, basically life sucks, deal with it, it's your job. So there was very little offered in the way of support. I buried this for about 7-8 years. And then last year, it all came roaring back to me when a similar incident occurred. And I was subsequently, finally, after much denial, diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. And I have spent the last year and a bit dealing with it, working with a very good doctor who actually works with the Canadian Forces and deals with officers coming back from Afghanistan from deployment. So she's right up my alley. And trying to educate other officers. Now I'm in a position of leadership, so I'm in a bit of a position to be able to do that. Dealing, like I said, dealing on a day-to-day basis with HR issues, with return to work, with WSIB. And the ironic thing is I actually spent time on our critical incident team telling other officers, yeah, you're probably going to have these post-traumatic stress reactions, and completely ignoring them in myself. So I, like I said, I think I have kind of a unique perspective. I've gone all the way from living it to dealing with it, and now to sort of advocating for how things should be done.
The participants began by offering insight on whether or not a stigma exists around mental health in Canadian workplaces.
But I think the challenge is always going to be that with mental health issues, the overload that results, it spills over into the rest of the workforce. And I think that's the greatest challenge, is that sense of frustration that the rest of the workforce feels when they feel that they have to kick it up a notch for their colleagues. I think more so than the physical components, because it's much more, it reaches a lot more corners, right? And I know our staff struggle with it day in and day out. And as well, because it isn't black and white, it isn't something that they can see and feel, then they're challenged. And I'm not sure that that's something that's going to go away quite so quickly. A lot of the challenges we face with mental health issues is that to manage or to support an individual with a mental health issue. And I struggle with the term because, quite frankly, I think we all at some point in time require some additional support. simply, and it doesn't have to do it has nothing to do with a mental illness. It's that spectrum of, at this point in time, I need some support. So allowing the organization the time to recognize that and to provide that support is critical. And I'm not sure that organizations totally appreciate that.
You have to start looking at what kind of culture do we have in the workplace. And it is starting from the top, looking at, well, what kind of work environment are we encouraging in the workplace? Are we recognizing that there are load issues, there are economic issues in the workplace? And how then do we support our workforce? There has to be programs put into place that you just can't look at, oh, okay, it's disability, they have to go off on disability, now they're off on sick leave. You have to find a root cause.
Also, I think the other important aspect of the standard is that, and perhaps this is different from some other standards, in that it moves towards health promotion as well as prevention. And this is a very key aspect of it, and I think an area that gets people talking more, gets them understanding things more, does a lot to reduce stigma.
Cheryl Edwards, a lawyer specializing in occupational health and safety law, was able to explain some of the liabilities employers may face if mental health issues aren't addressed in the workplace.
I guess the big one is civil liability. That's, I think, really driven a lot of recognition. So an employee who has been subject to a course of conduct that is outside of the existing legislation, for example, outside of workplace violence provisions, or it doesn't fit neatly under the Human Rights Code because someone has discriminated against them because of their sex or their race, a prohibited ground. A person who's been subject to just a nasty, mean, demeaning, horrible course of conduct has always been able to, and increasingly the courts have recognized, they're able to say, this is not what I signed up for. This is not an expected fundamental condition and term of my employment. Probably the most prominent case is one involving the RCMP and a woman by the name of Nancy Stulls, who received $950,000 in combined lost, I won't break it down, but combined damages for her losses and the infliction of mental suffering. So that's been a big driver. Employers want to avoid civil liability. Workers' compensation entitlements are increasing. The bar on when a worker can say to the Workplace Safety Insurance Board of the particular jurisdiction that they've experienced chronic stress or traumatic mental stress has been lowering. So the entitlement to lost wages has been lowering. OHS not so much a risk. We haven't really seen many prosecutions, and certainly that's probably far off. It would only be in the event that an employer didn't meet minimum standards and create a policy or procedure.